Hey guys, this is Anurag Sharma, and today I'll be discussing with you Fiscal Policy of India. Guys, I have discussed all the components of monetary policy, and fiscal policy is another economic policy of the government which is related to government's income and expenditure. It is prepared by me, Anurag Sharma. Now let's discuss what is fiscal policy. Now, fiscal policy is the sister strategy of monetary policy. The basic difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy is that monetary policy is made by the Reserve Bank of India and fiscal policy is made by the Government of India. It is related to government expenditure and income, from the various sources of the income and where, parts where, expenditures are made by the government. It typically includes public expenditure policy, taxation policy, public debt policy and deficit financing. I'll be discussing with these two important components of fiscal policy in this particular lesson. This fiscal policy, it is also known as income and expenditure policy or tax expenditure policy. So this is a basic introductory portion of fiscal policy. Now how this fiscal policy works, the mechanism of fiscal policy. See guys, try to remember this CZ diagram. There is a balance between tax and public spending. This will explain, this diagram is the simply explanation of the mechanism of fiscal policy. Now how it operates or how it works, the basic idea of fiscal policy is to find a balance between a changing tax rates and public spending. Let's go back to this diagram. We need to find a balance between tax and public spending. Now we need, in a developing economy like India, we need spending also, and we need a good tax structure. So fiscal policy, the basic objective of fiscal policy is to find the balance between a right balance between these two components. Now how these two components operates in an economy, especially in an economy like India. Now whenever there is a stagnant economy, means that economy which is not growing very much, and which is in a stagnant position, there is a need for increasing spending. And how can we increase spending? We can increase spending by lowering the tax rates. But whenever we lower the tax rate, there is always a risk of inflation. Now what is inflation? Inflation is simply whenever there is a rising, whenever the value of money decreases as comparison to the value of the goods, it is known as inflation. And on the other hand, when the economy needs to be curbed, means whenever there is inflation is too strong, then economy may need a slowdown. And how can we impose this slowdown? We can, government can use fiscal policy to increase taxes. Whenever there will be increased tax rate, so it will suck money out of the economy, and there can be a, we can apply brakes on the that particular situation whenever there is a strong, too strong inflation. Now these are the different tools of fiscal policy: public expenditure policy, taxation policy, public debt policy and deficit financing. These two tools are very important. I'll be I'll be discussing these two tools in the later lessons. Now public expenditure policy. Now it is very self-explanatory. Public expenditure policy: the expenditure incurred by public authorities like central, state or the local government to satisfy the collective social wants of the people is known as public expenditure. Whatever the expenditure is made by the government, whether it is central government, state government or local government, that particular expenditure is known as public expenditure and policy related to public expenditure. Now in developing economies, public expenditure policy may not only accelerate economic growth and promotes employment opportunities, but also plays a useful role in reducing poverty and inequalities in income distribution. So it is very important component of fiscal policy. Now these are the two type of public expenditure which is made by the government. One is developmental expenditure and other one is the non-development expenditure. These two are again self-explanatory in nature. What is development expenditure and non-development expenditure? Development expenditure includes the development of state enterprise and various support to private sector, development of infrastructure like railways, roads, power projects, bridges, hospitals, etc. This comes development expenditure. And non-developmental expenditure includes the various social service schemes like pension schemes or old age pension schemes or Narega. These are the non-developmental expenditure, and these two components are the part of public expenditures. we need more and more development expenditure, so that there is more and more infrastructure. It will attract more and more investment, and again it will it will lead to the increase of the standard of life. It will lead to the increase of employment. It will lead to the reduction of poverty. So this is, we need to incur more and more development expenditure, and for that we need to make more and more public expenditure, because this development expenditure cannot be made by the private sector alone. Now, another important tool of the fiscal policy is taxation policy, and we know what are taxes. It is an involuntary fee levied on individuals or corporations that is enforced by a government entity, whether local, regional, or national, in order to finance government activities. And these taxes are the main sources of revenue of government. So, very important tool of fiscal policy is taxation policy. And tax are basically of two types: direct taxes and indirect taxes. Guys, I believe that we know that what are direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes are those taxes which are paid by the assessee themselves, which is paid by you and me. Just like the major and the most common example of direct tax are income tax and wealth tax. Now other one is your indirect tax. Indirect tax, which is paid by the some other party. For example, like we buy any product, suppose we buy a soap, or buy an insurance, or whenever we have a dinner at a restaurant, we pay bill, and we pay service tax. So service tax is an example of indirect tax. That shopkeeper is collecting the service tax, and he will pay the service tax which we are paying. So these are the basic two types of taxes. One is direct tax and indirect tax. Direct tax example, income tax and wealth tax. Indirect tax, like service tax, value added tax, excise duty. These are comes under the indirect tax. Another basic difference between direct tax and indirect tax is that direct tax is progressive in nature and indirect tax is non-progressive in nature. It means that whenever there is rise in the income, so the amount of tax, the magnitude of tax will increase in case of direct tax. If you are earning higher income, then the tax paid by you will be more. But indirect taxes, it is non-progressive in nature, means it is levied on the same, at the whether a rich or poor, the indirect tax remains the same. For example, if I buy a chocolate of 10 rupee, then whatever the tax is paid by me is same. If I am buying that chocolate and you are buying the same, we are paying the same amount of tax, and that is known as indirect tax, that is non-progressive in nature. So guys, these are the basic two important tools of fiscal policy. And very major tool, very important tool of government's economic policy to give economy a shape, and the developing economy like ours, this fiscal policy plays a huge role, and these are the basic important components. So this all about the fiscal policy. Now these the various objectives of taxation policy, that we can mobilize resources, we can promote savings, we can promote investments, we can promote equality of income and wealth by the proper implementation of taxation policy. Like taxes are the major sources of government's revenue, and the revenue in India has been rising year by year. It also promotes savings, one of the main important objectives of taxation policy. And it also promote investments. We government gives tax rebates, tax concession, and tax holidays for to promote investment in particular areas. It also different kinds of progressive tax are levied. So there is a difference between direct taxes and indirect taxes. So it also brings equality of income and wealth. Rich people pay more taxes, and whatever the level of income, the tax is levied at that particular segment. So it brings equality of income and wealth also. So these are the various objectives of taxation policy, which all comes under the fiscal policy. Guys, don't forget to give your valuable feedback and reviews. This is Anurag Sharma signing off. Happy learning.